I'll call the special city council meeting of June 24th, 2020 to order at noon. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer is absent. David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason is absent. That's a quorum of council.
Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Yeah, June 24th, 2020, special city council meeting.
Second.
Any additions or modifications to the agenda? Is there any objection to the agenda submitted? Hearing none, the agenda will stand approved. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose? Hearing none, we have communications by and petitions from visitors. We'll start with guest speakers for an incident management team report. And Dr. Sanders, do we have you online?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I apologize for answering your text at the last minute there, but would you care to give council just a quick briefing on our recent cases?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I think everybody is aware now, yesterday we identified two days. We identified two additional cases at Ocean Beauty on Monday. These were identified in screening like our previous cases. However, a little bit different is this was the individual's third test when we identified the two positives. The individuals as well as their contacts are in isolation. The state CDC liaison as well as epidemiology is working with the public health nurse to conduct a very extensive contact tracing with this case. We have tested all contacts as well as any of the Ocean Beauty employees that go out into the community. At this point, they have all had, all the Ocean Beauty employees have tested negative and have not had any direct exposure with anybody that would be considered to be a direct contact with these individuals. So the risk to the community at this point, I still feel very reassured that the risk is low. And I also feel reassured that we are going to be able to contain this at Ocean Beauty and it won't turn into a larger cluster for their facility. They are being very cooperative and being very aggressive in the contact tracing and testing.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just scroll through council quickly for any questions. Councilman Baylor?
No, thank you.
Sherman?
No, thank you.
Guard?
No questions. Thank you.
Meyer?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question on how the other processing plant testing is going. I know that we've heard a lot about Ocean Beauty because they're the ones that have had the test results, but and hearing now that it was actually the third test for this individual. Are you happy with the other processors testing and multiple testing to catch things early on?
Yes, the other processors are doing a similar process with the exception of Trident. They're still doing their initial screening and quarantine outside of Cordova, and I'm very satisfied with their process. We're working on rolling out to all the processors periodic testing during the continued operations for the summer. We're trying to apply the CDC's guidelines on people that are living in congregate settings and have some level of continued screening throughout the year so that we can continue to identify these cases early. And I feel very, very comfortable with the processes as they're, I feel like all the processors are following their plans and the plans seem to be working to help catch these cases early and contain them.
Okay, thank you.
Allison?
No questions, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sanders. Really appreciate the briefing. We know you have a really busy schedule, and if you have to go, please do. And we have the incident team here to fill us in on the rest of the briefings. So council, for your benefit, those that aren't here in the meeting room, we have incident management team leader Paul Trumbley in the audience, as well as Susie, Tony, and Assistant Clerk Tina, and Finance Manager Ken, and then Jason Gabrielson on IT. So next is the IMT report. Manager Howarth.
So I'm going to turn over this report. Heather, are you online?
I am.
Okay, so Heather is going to give our incident management report.
Hello, everybody. So we have a few things that have happened since the last time I was on. The harbor mask situation is going great. We did order 2,400 masks that came in and have started to be distributed through our ambassadors, who are doing really great work throughout the community. In addition, we had Salvation Army Distribution Day Monday, and they fed 79 families. I participated in that event as Cordova prepared and handed out emergency family plans in English, Spanish, and Tagalog, and I also included some of those city masks. So each person that came for that distribution went home with a mask for themselves and their families. They have bulked up community testing through CCMC and Alanka. You can get testing pretty much on a daily basis at this point. In addition, they are doing weekly testing at the airport, except for Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And from everything that I've heard, that testing is going well. Working through it, CCMC and Alanka are doing a fantastic job of working on that plan and working intermittently with the processors to develop what their best testing processes and practices are going to be. In addition, I received some new state COVID PSAs for businesses on the state website. They put out a bunch of different advertisements to help businesses let folks in the community know kind of what was going on with their store. A lot of them are very cute. They've got little bears and rubber boots and such on them. And I believe Harmony down at the city has started printing those with the help of Kathy to distribute to some of our businesses throughout the community. So that's going to be super helpful. I mean, it's just, extra stuff to kind of advertise and get the word out about what everyone is doing, which is always positive. In addition, Kathy with the Chamber of Commerce has been working pretty diligently with the businesses, and we've started to have some of those economical recovery conversations that are really important to our community. As far as TIO type information, we still have the COVID website up. Those updates are coming up as needed, and we're putting new information into them. The 424 well number is still out. NVE is changing that automated update for the public. And again, it's just a daily update for what's going on in Cordova regarding COVID-19, where folks can get testing and such. We have the 424 info line out with the city still. This is the line where you can call and you actually get a fellow who can direct you to whoever you need to speak to regarding your COVID questions. So if you're not someone who likes that Cordova Prepared at yahoo.com email, you can actually talk to a fellow who will help you out in person. As far as meetings, we are continuing to do bi-weekly stakeholder meetings. This is just a chance for different businesses and associations in our community to kind of update each other on what they're doing regarding COVID and how they're keeping up with things, if they have any needs, if there's anything that the city can provide. We generally get pretty positive feedback at these meetings. I think it's good for us all to stay connected and keep having those conversations. I'm still doing the weekly processor meetings. And we have great participation there. Everyone gets on every single week. They let us know if they have folks coming in. Those numbers are directed to the incident management team. if they have any concerns within their plans or updates to give us as a community. They do it on that call. This last week, we had several visitors on that call. We had Sam Rabung from ADS&G, Charles Pelton from DHSS, and Brian Fisher from the FDOC. All of them were pretty impressed about the way that Cordova has been managing this incident, especially in regard to the fisheries. So I think we can all feel pretty confident there, and comforted too that our processes are working so well in between, our medical community, our incident command team, and themselves. So that's quite a blessing for us as a community. In addition to that, I don't have anything else to add for the moment. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, Councilman Sherman?
No questions. Thanks, Heather.
Councilman Baylor?
No questions. Thanks for your work, Heather.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Allison?
No questions. Thank you, Heather.
Councilman Guard?
No questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Other items to report under the incident management team report, Helen, or?
No, I think that will do. Thank you.
Okay, any general questions, council? Okay, next item is audience comments regarding agenda items. So we can go to the phones now, and for those in the public listening, that telephone number is 253-6202, and you'll go to an on hold until we answer. And then if you can just state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to testify. So that number again is 253-6202. Mason, are we on YouTube audio only?
Yes.
And so there's a delay, maybe 30 seconds?
Ten.
Seconds. Okay. So there's just a brief delay, so just waiting. We don't have any calls at this time from 253-6202. Go ahead and call in if you have any audience comments to provide. And I'll move on to correspondence. We have an email regarding the road closure for the 25-mile culvert project. Any comments, council? Hearing none. Our first order of business for this agenda is council ratification of CARES Fund allocations and approval of COVID projects funded by CARES funds. So council, if it's a will of council, we could maybe just have a general motion to approve the use of CARES Act funds, and that could start a discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve the use of the CARES Act funding.
Second, Mrs. Sherman.
Have a motion, Baylor, and second, Sherman. So to your motion, Councilman Baylor.
I'll let others speak at it first.
Councilman Sherman?
I've gone over this a couple times, and I like what staff has developed. I'm just interested in discussing it a little bit further with fellow council members.
Okay, I'll just go through the list here. If there's any particular items you want to discuss, council. Councilman Guard?
No comments at this time.
Councilman Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, I guess I'm like the others. I want to hear what others have to say. I kind of wish that
I'll start.
there's a little more community input on the CARES funding. I know everyone's really busy. It's a fishing time and summer and people are hurting. But so I like the plan that the city staff has laid out. Again, I just hope that we're not missing certain areas that we could be using this money for the most benefit for the whole community. But it looks good so far.
Okay, great. And then Councilman Allison, and then maybe I should have started with just a brief by Manager Howarth, but Councilman Allison?
Yeah, is this where we're talking about projects and specific projects and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. In general, I guess the plan is good, or I'm approving of it. I'm a little bit hesitant on the individual and nonprofit grant type things. I think that's picking winners and losers oftentimes. And, the way we set it up is going to be instrumental into whether that works or not and doesn't cause us more headaches or not. I would prefer to see the money spent for community things. That said, I think the projects in general look good. I don't believe that CARES funding should be used for any of the E911 stuff. We have money in the account that's been sitting there for several years that would do the addressing if somebody would just get on it and do the addressing. The actual system cost, there's ways to pay for that already that are minimally invasive to the people who would be paying for that. So I think there are ways to get that done. So I don't think that the CARES funding should be used for anything E911 related, since there is a different funding mechanism already in it for that. The bathroom things, I would hope that we could get bathrooms made for less than half or a third of a house cost, but I'm not a contractor, and I don't think we need government solid cement vaults like they have for the federal government when the federal government does a project. But I'll defer to a contractor for what those things cost. But I would generally agree that the bathrooms in all of those places would be good. I think that we do also need to remodel the one at the snack shack at the city sandlot field, one by the high school. It's known by lots of different names, I guess. But those bathrooms, the little guys can't even open those doors. They are so heavy and hard to open, kind of dingy in there. Anyway, I would believe that those, like to see a remodel on those if we're doing a bunch of things with bathrooms. But other than that, a bathroom at the elementary school would be nice. There is no way for kids to go to the bathroom once school is out at that park, and it's pretty heavily used. So that said, I'm willing to look at whatever projects we can, but I think most of the money needs to be spent on community projects that will help our community into the future, long after this COVID thing is gone. So those are my thoughts right now, anyway.
Okay, and then I think Manager Howarth wanted to provide a little additional overview.
Sure, thank you, everyone. I think there's two ways we could approach this. Number one is to look at the initial memo, which basically puts out little buckets, 5 buckets of expenditures that the CARES Act funding could cover. Some of them are just a given. First responder and incident management team payroll, we anticipate right around $900,000. The good news about this is that they allow 100% reimbursement of city expenses for first responders and the incident management team. So we are are spending these resources now will get reimbursed for them. So it's a little bit of a plug, if you will, for potential lost revenue. CARES Act administration and non-payroll expenditures, just so you know, this will cover the increase in legal fees, our contractor who helped with our PR, work that we're doing with the Chamber of Commerce that they are doing on our behalf, as well as other communication, mask purchases, all that kind of stuff that is important for our immediate response. The next three categories are areas where you as council need to provide direction to staff. Facilities enhancements. These are projects that we have to put on the ground. And I want to read something that has been a defining thing for us as we contemplate these kinds of projects. These are the federal rules, and I'll read. The cost of projects that would not be expected to increase capacity to a significant extent due to the public health emergency would not be necessary, and it would not be necessary for the public health emergency, are not eligible uses of fund payments. So what this does is basically limits us to think about projects we can get on the ground as soon as possible, that we can identify as being necessary for us to maintain social distance and maintain health and safety. Those are the critical definers, and they have to be projects we can get on the ground as soon as possible so that we can demonstrate that those projects have actually benefited our community's response to COVID. So that in and of itself eliminates some projects that might be difficult to get on the ground until, let's say, a year from now, because a year from now we may or may not have a declared emergency on the ground. And if we can't demonstrate that the project has actually benefited our COVID response, it will be ineligible. So I share that with you because the three categories that are listed, facilities enhancements and the CARES Fund project discussion list, those are things that we think we can get on the ground pretty quickly. Some of them are really borderline with the Fed rules. But if you as council could prioritize the kind of direction you want to go with this, that would help staff immensely. We need to get contracts on the ground as soon as possible, and my goal would be whatever you approve today, we'll do our best to get requests for proposals out and get a commitment back for your approval. The second of the three categories is nonprofit grants. There is an opportunity. Many of the nonprofits here aren't large enough to have qualified for some of the funding opportunities that are available. The Alaska Community Foundation has received a fairly large chunk of money that they need to deploy. But we as a city have an opportunity to get matching grants from the Rasmussen Foundation and at least one other entity, where if we put money into a particular nonprofit groups, we can get it matched. So the opportunity to increase our funds is there. So I think we need to acknowledge the real exceptional services that these nonprofits provide to us, whether or not they are sophisticated paid organizations or not, and be able to provide some relief for that and capture matching grants. And then the final category is the individual assistance grants. The reality is we do not have enough money, that we've not received enough CARES funding to really impact our local businesses to any substantial effect. The state has a $280 million CARES Act fund package being deployed through Credit Union One, relatively easy to apply for. They're considering expanding the types of businesses that are going to be eligible for that. As of Monday, I think they have 89 million in applications, not approved applications, in applications period. So they are way under what they had hoped they would be able to get out. They're considering expanding the banks that might be able to assist getting the money out. But there are many opportunities at the federal level and certainly now at the state level to get funding assistance to our local businesses. And we'll be working with the Chamber and Prince William Sound Economic Development District to provide assistance, direct assistance to local businesses to help them apply for those grants and get the relief that they need. Which brings me to why individuals. I think we are now all seeing that there is a fisheries issue that potentially could impact this community by year end. We're going to hope that the fishing increases and we don't continue to see what could be another disastrous fishing season. But when we consider economic recovery, I would like us to think about how that happens. If the state gives grants to our local businesses to help support their costs, I believe one of the most important ways that we could contribute to the economic recovery of our community is make sure that people are spending money in our community and spending locally. So this $1 million is designed to be a fund that would go directly to individuals in our community. We would develop an application process. They have to demonstrate that they don't have to demonstrate, they have to confirm that they've been impacted by the COVID emergency. That's the criteria. And then we could deploy funds directly to individuals for expenditure directly in our community. We found a way through a gift card where we could limit expenditures to businesses in Cordova so that the resources weren't going out online or whatever. So those are the suggestions at this point in time. I just wanted to explain them a little bit and also just really offer up that every single penny right now has to be spent on the immediate response to our CARES emergency, our COVID emergency. So the projects that are listed on the second page for your consideration, we believe we can deploy and get in place immediately. With the exception of the bathroom ones, we're going to have to go out to bid and see what we can find. E911, as was mentioned, might be a bit of a stretch, but it was mentioned at the last council meeting that that was something that we want to consider. So this list is for your discussion and prioritization. And that's all I need to share.
Mr. Mayor.
So circle back through, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, so the E911, I wouldn't have a problem with using these funds if we can get away with it. The addressing was another one that I was concerned about. If we could get that addressing done, it's just another thing that supports the whole community. And I think a case for first responders knowing exactly where people live and addressing could be made. Maybe it'll be a stretch or not. The harbor, I see you have stainless steel fish hand washing tables, harbor, but I think a large focus needs to be on the water delivery system that's down there. There's a lot of there's some issues with that, and actually down here by the grid, there's a pipe coming out of the ground that's been patched and been leaking, and that's their water supply coming in. Then there's a lot of valves and diversions that bring water to these different hand washing stations and wash downs and stuff are basically $5 hose bib connectors and things like that. So I think you get somebody like Copper Highway Heating that could go down there and put the proper stainless steel fittings in and valves, and I put some time and effort into the delivery system, something that'll last for years to come. And then update the tables, I think, but have the plumbing on your list. And I think if you got some consulting from somebody like Doug Pettit, you could really get that water delivery system down there right up to standard, the high standard. I didn't even think about the ball field bathroom, as Councilman Allison brought up. That's an interesting one because that is a wreck down there. Adding that up. The individual assistant grants, that to me raises a lot of red flags directly to individuals, and then you got wording here, eligible restrictions and requirements. I think if you're going to hand out, I think the term was used winners and losers. I'm not in favor of that at all. If you want to take the number of citizens in this community and divide it into that number and everybody gets a fair share, that's one thing. But saying that one person was impacted more than the other, I don't go along with that. I think we've all been impacted. I think when the state, when the dividends come out, they were going to they're going to reward people just because they lived here longer. If you lived here 30 years, you're going to get 30,000. If you lived here a year, you didn't get hardly anything. And that got taken to court, and everybody gets treated the same. That's why we all get the same check. So I would have a hard time with somebody coming up with the thoughts of, well, you deserve more than the next guy. The nonprofit grants, I'm glad you explained that a little bit more. That I can see where that can come around to help us. But what about the chamber? The chamber's doing a lot of extra work, or is that part of City Hall function? Can we somehow divert some funds to the chamber?
That's in the CARES Act administration and non-payroll expenses. Those are all of
Okay.
our contractual things. So yes, on that. And then just a clarification, the individual assistant grants by federal requirement, state requirement, they will have to apply. But it is not our intention at all to come up with criteria as to who's eligible or not. It's that everyone in the community has been impacted in some way by this, and everyone in the community would be eligible if they apply. But we have to have an application form, so.
Okay, well, down here it says eligibility restrictions and requirements, so that would imply that there's more to it than that. I lost my train of thought. That's all for now.
So just a clarification for council, because that's the way I read it too, Helen. I think if I understand what you're saying, that eligibility and requirements is looking up at the federal government for our overall program. It's not the city's eligibility and requirements
Right,
looking out to
it's,
the citizens.
the eligibility is you have to apply.
Gotcha. Okay.
You have to sign something that says
Yes.
that you were impacted.
Yeah.
So the feds are okay with it.
Yeah.
Was that all this round, Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, for now.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Sherman.
Yeah, okay, thank you for some of that clarification. So the first two buckets, the first responder and the CARES Act, are no-brainers. We know what happens there, and that's great that we are getting reimbursed. The nonprofit grants, thank you for explaining that gives the option for some matches. I think that is really a great way to go. So that's number one on my list. And then the facility enhancements, I go down through the list. Everybody knows my background. I'm all in favor of this tech upgrade. We've been trying to do that for years, and now we're seeing why we've been asking for it. Some of the issues we've had. Same thing with laptops. I think the ambulance bay decontamination areas, I think that's really a useful item and something that we probably never thought of and never dreamed we would need, but obviously we do. And then in my order of priorities, I'm liking the bathrooms. Again, that looks awful expensive for bathrooms, but I agree with Councilman Allison. I would add in the snack shack and maybe the elementary school, because those were two areas that we have a lot of problems with in terms of, defending for COVID operations, trying to get those playgrounds open for people is difficult. So I'm in favor of those. And I agree with Councilman Baylor about the water delivery system to the harbor. I know there are some other harbor improvements maybe looming on the horizon for us, but this would be a good opportunity to maybe improve that so that then we could move forward with, new cleaning stations with hand washing stations right there. I'm not sure how I feel about the DEC kitchen at the Darky. And I am in favor of the E911 and the addressing. So that would kind of be my priorities.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm all done, please.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Sherman. I just wanted to mention Public Works Director Sam is here as well. I missed that earlier somehow. Councilman Guard.
Yes, thank you. If I could, I'd like to get one quick clarification from the manager, she talked about some of the stuff proposed was fairly shaky as far as eligibility. If I could get some clarification from her on that, I'd appreciate it.
It's really a matter of how fast we can get these projects on the ground. It may be that we can't get the bathroom facilities into some of those areas until next summer. That would be a very questionable timeline. I think this, if we can get these any project we can get on the ground this summer, we can make a case for. But the further out it goes and the longer it takes us to get things on the ground, the less likely it will be that they'll be eligible.
Okay, thank you. And you don't see any issues with eligibility for the nonprofit grants?
Not at all. In fact, they're
Or the
very,
individual assistance program, right?
right. Both of those are specifically listed in the Fed guidelines, and the state has reaffirmed that nonprofits can get those. If we want to pass it through to another nonprofit, like us giving that to the Cordova Community Foundation to not only build their own capacity, but help us, that is a legitimate expense. And then grants directly to individuals, there's other communities that have done it. Valdez, Skagway, among them, but many communities are choosing to give 100% of their CARES funding to their community foundation. For instance, Bethel is doing that. So, you know, every community is responding differently depending on how much money they've gotten. And I think given the limitations of this, 3.4 million sounds like a lot of money until you start parceling it out and you go, whoa, wish we had more. So, yeah, that's my recommendation, is to give out grants to individuals to help our business community and to help individuals directly, rather than trying to, I guess, I think, was mentioned, choosing winners and losers. If we have this small pot of money, it would be very difficult to deploy directly to businesses.
Okay. Thank you for that response. It clears up some things for me. As far as prioritizing and support, going down the bucket list, our first responders is kind of a no-brainer. The CARES Act administration and non-payroll expenditures is kind of the same. Facilities enhancement, if we've got time to get stuff in that will make improvements to our health and well-being in the community, without throttling us with facilities to support once this is all over and funding goes away. I'm in favor of that. And the nonprofits and the individual assistance grants, if there are no eligibility questions about those, I'm in support of those. And I guess as far as the discussion list, I'm kind of in there with most of the rest of the comments. I'd like to see some, if we're doing bathroom facilities and they're feasible to get done this year. I think the grade school and the ball diamond there by the high school are a great place to add them. I think they're a great idea for out at the Odiak campground and site to get us out of the communal bathroom situation out there. I don't see anything on here I really can't support. So thank you very much. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Councilman Gard, and Councilman Gleason and Schaefer are absent. So Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation of these different pots too. That really helps. I think it's interesting for the individual grants of having something that they can, a gift card where they can only use it locally. I think that's something I didn't really think that was possible. So I think that's an interesting way to handle that part. And then also that the nonprofit grants, it's nice to hear that there's some matching opportunities out there for that bucket. And as far as the facility enhancements kind of project list goes, again, there's kind of like what is said before me, is There's nothing on here that I really can't support. I think the bathroom facilities is a good one to have on there, but I see that as kind of a big workload, and hopefully those can get done, and you guys would know better than me of how quickly those can get built. But I think hand washing stations and the ability to have bathroom facilities would be higher on my priority list rather than building out the whole bathroom kind of facility. If that takes a longer time, just having the water and sewer properly run to these areas so that hand washing could be in there, or you can hook up a hose to get water, because I think having water access to these areas is the most important thing for cleaning and staying sanitary in those ways. The Odiak campground site, that would be a pretty big priority on my list, just getting rid of that communal bathroom area. I think, especially with this, I think having individual bathrooms, especially if they have their trailers, their homes already there, having the hookups there so it's not being shared is one of the better outcomes of that. Same for the boat haul out area. I think it would be nice to have individual water sewer going to those areas so that the boats and the individual units could be supplied. But as far as the list goes, I really don't have a problem with any of it, and I think you guys can prioritize it and see what's useful and how to prioritize those. One thing about at the top for the kind of like the telephone networking, all that, I would like to see something on there about our maybe governance communications for council. I think that is one area that has been kind of raised during all of this, is the public being able to package agenda items. And I think the way that we've done it has worked for us, having PDF agendas on there, but it's not very searchable for the community. The community's been obviously a lot more involved with our meetings lately because of what's going on, but it would be nice to maybe upgrade how we use this, or how we run meetings and get out our agenda items to the general public. I know that Valdez and a bunch of other communities around the state use different systems where you can actually search agenda items and topics, and I don't know if something like that costs. I think that was one area where we could improve on, and if we could use some of this money on that and getting information out to the public would be one of my top priorities. So I think that would be nice to put on there. But besides that, it looks good. So thank you.
Okay, and Councilman Allison.
Okay, so the first two categories I'm fine with. The nonprofits, whatever we can get for matching, I agree with that. I still think, well, let me just go down my priority list. Priorities, I think that the communication system, such as Vice Mayor Meyer just discussed, and the whole thing with wireless mics and being able to communicate with the community, and a better system of knowing who's online and how many are online. You know, that whole thing that I think Jason's been looking into. But anyway, that's a pretty high priority. Following that, I would say that no hand contact door openers for all of our public facilities. I'm not sure what's on our state required list, but you said was part of that. But anyway, I think all of our public access doors need to have the ability for no hand contact opening, whether that's foot operated or automatic, or if I can use my elbow or some other way besides sticking my hand out there and grabbing onto the handle would be a better thing. As far as the priorities on the facilities, I think the harbor water supply system, as Councilmember Baylor described, is a high priority item for us. I think that the remodeling the bathroom at Sandlot, ball field, snack shack, whatever you want to call it, there is pretty high priority. That's pretty high use. You know, as long as it's not 3 feet of snow out there, that park gets used quite heavily. And then the next bathroom that I would say would be a priority, if they can only do 1 or 2 this year, would be the one at the elementary school. That's high use and no facilities anywhere near that place that they can use once the school is locked. So I think that's a pretty high priority. After that, whatever bathrooms you think, you know, the rest of them I don't think are going to be used near as heavily. The sewer and water to the individual slots at Odiak, I think is a doable thing and is pretty high priority on my list. Other than that, I guess I can go with the individual grants if everybody in town is going to be eligible for it, and it's kind of like a dividend application, then I can go for that. If everybody has to spend their money in Cordova, then that's as good an any other use of it. I think that the E911 system, once again, I'll say that although I think that that's a high priority item for the community, I don't believe that CARES funding needs to pay for that unless we're looking for projects to spend the money on. If we've got extra money, then it can certainly be used for that. But there are funding mechanisms for the 911 system, and we've had for a number of years money in there for the addressing. It just has not gotten done through about 3 managers now that have had that on their plate and haven't gotten to it. So I think we just need to get the addressing done as there's money in there. But I would only use CARES funding if it was the last thing on the list and there was nothing else to spend the money on and we had to spend it, then that's obviously something that could be spent pretty quick. So anyway, I think the other projects are all good, and I agree with Councilmember Meyer that I think staff has as good idea as anybody on what the priority list is. These are, you know, it's sad we have to get it all spent within a few months' time here, but we will do what we need to do, and I'm confident that staff can do what can be done. But I'd really like to see the bathrooms at the playgrounds for those kids and the other projects that we've talked about. So thank you.
Okay, Council, I think this has all been real helpful for staff, for guidance and stuff. As we get back to the motion, I'm going to kind of defer to the clerk and city manager for just a second on process on how that motion stated. But first, several of you have mentioned the bathrooms at the school playground as a priority, and I just wanted to circle back with city manager because I know the school district also had a large chunk of CARES Act funding, and I just wondered if that was if we've been, I guess, discussing their use with the school, whether that would come out of their budget or the city's.
I'm wondering, I will say that the discussion list, I think maybe what would make more sense is if there's nothing objectionable on that list, let's let staff figure out if there's other pots of money that could potentially be used, and get some quotes and bids and timelines so that we understand what we can reasonably do in the next, well, before the ground freezes, let's just say. And then we would bring those projects back to you one at a time, or maybe in groups, and say, here's a quote, here's a bid. You guys can approve them individually, but they won't be a departure from this list, with the exception of those few things that you've added and we need to investigate. For action item, if you as a council could approve the general allocations, that would direct staff to, would allow staff to go ahead with some of these things and get them in play, start the planning processes, including the facilities enhancements, which again, have to go through our normal procurement process and would come back to you for approval nonetheless. So if that's reasonable, I would request ratification of or approval of the fund allocations as an action for council at this time.
Thank you. You answered both the process question on the city side on bringing the projects back one at a time for council approval, and also the stating in the motion. And so Councilman Baylor, I think that's what exactly is going to look for is the actual $3.41 million of CARES Act funding to be generally allocated as presented in these 5 buckets. And then it's just more specific to the public, the amount and stuff. Is that works?
And I
Susan?
believe that was the motion that was made.
Yeah, it was. I just think it's good for the record to have that amount. So, okay, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, just a couple more comments. The other thing I missed was the HVA system for the city hall, and that is becoming an issue for restaurants and other buildings, the air conditioning and that sort of thing. I would suggest that we have somebody look at that, somebody qualified in the business look at that, and in writing give us an opinion that our system is fine and there's no dangers, and then I think that should come to council as a public record. I'm just looking down the line of lawyers and things.
Yeah.
On the bathrooms here, a couple comments were meant about, well, maybe we don't have time to get to them, and a thought occurred to me for Sam and Tony is, if the timeline is tight, look at just putting washdown stations in, and in getting your sewer and your water run to the spot, because that's your big cost and time frame. We could always put a sink there, and then down the line, if we got money to go ahead and build a bathroom, but they got to run that water line there, put a curb stop, shut it down for winter use, take the sink out of there. But that might be a way to get your infrastructure in if we can't get the whole shoot and match. So that's all I had.
Okay, so just for the record, I'll just say, so the motion was to approve to ratify CARES Act funding as presented, and the way it's presented here is a total of $3.414 million to spend on COVID-related projects and economic recovery. And what staff brought forward was these general buckets of $900,000 for first responder and incident management team payroll. Second item was $250,000 for CARES Act administration and non-payroll expenses. And then the 3 that the manager requested council feedback on as well, $1,189,908 for facilities enhancements, $75,000 for nonprofit grants, and $1 million for individual assistance grants. So that's the motion and second you have in front of you. And I think I heard support for that motion from Councilman Baylor, who made it, Councilman Sherman.
Yes, I support that as well.
Councilman Guard?
Yes, I'm in support.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, I'm in support. I did want to add one other thing that I think would be pretty high priority that I don't really see on the list here. The ability to do city functions online, like paying property tax, sales tax, kind of just getting a lot of our systems that we have online. That would be something that is more software based and not infrastructure side. So if some of these projects are getting harder to do, I think investing in those abilities would be wise use of the CARES funding. So residents can pay their bills, look up things all online without having to go in or call the office. And it would also hopefully have the ability for the staff, if something like this ever did happen again, or social distancing happened, where they could work from home probably a little bit easier if a lot of things are online. But I don't know if stuff like that costs. I know that software and getting that stuff can be pretty expensive. So I think that would be a good use of this CARES funding.
Thank you. Manager Howarth.
Just want to respond. So what's on the CARES Fund project list are those projects that are over $25,000 that would require council approval. And we are definitely working on our online and other kinds of communication to improve that. And that is in the CARES Act administration and non-payroll expenses bucket. So it is it is being addressed, and we recognize that as an imperative, so.
Just a quick,
Councilman Baylor.
yeah, so your $25,000, I hope we're not going to have $100,000 spent on 4 projects without council. I don't know if we want to say approval, but at least being run through council. So,
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the motion as it stands, with the understanding that all of the items that we've talked about today are included in the realm of possibility there for when staff takes a look at it. And I too would like to see even the smaller projects, you know, not every doorknob and handle, but you know, anything we're going to do that the public is going to see, I would certainly like to know about it as we're doing it, or as soon as possible to at least notify council of that, because we'll hear about it from the community. And just I guess one note of caution on the ability to pay online and that kind of thing. You know, we need to be careful that we're not, you know, for example, I wouldn't want property taxes to be able to pay with a credit card because it costs us 2% of our property taxes, you know, et cetera. So I know that we are taking credit cards for some of our things, but those decisions will cost us a lot down the road. I'm in favor of doing anything we can online, but we need to take a look at not only what it costs us for the software invest, but what it might cost us in lost revenues and things down the line. But yeah, I'm in favor of the motion as long as this discussion today is all part of the realm of possibilities out there. So thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. So the $25,000 spending limit or authorization of the city manager, that's the authorization they have. So I think what I'm hearing is advisory from council is you'd like to see what the projects and stuff look like. So thank you, and roll call vote, please.
Tom Baylor,
yes.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent. David Allison
Yeah.
and David Gleason is absent. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, council, the next item is a council discussion of election code changes and elections by email. And you have a communication here from the city clerk on pages 4 and 5. And a recommended action, which is discussion.
We need something on the table to discuss this, are you telling me?
No, I mean, I wanted this to be on a work session, but since we were having a special meeting, I put it on as a discussion item. So,
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and just open it up for discussion, and I'll just circle through council since there's not really a direct fiscal note or anything. And I'll start Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I think what we have in place right now, requesting a absentee ballot if you want one, is fine. I'm against going to a total mail-in like CTC or CWC or CEC has. I think that the process we have in place right now allows for people to request that, and those that don't can come to the polls and vote. So that's my thoughts right now.
Councilman Sherman.
Thank you. So of the recommendations that Susan's brought forward to us, I am interested in number 2, just seeing how the primary goes and the general election goes. I think those are things we should be cognizant of and watching, and just watching nationwide and what else is going on in the state. I would be open to looking at city code to allow more ease in voting by mail. I agree. I don't know if we need to go 100%, but maybe make early voting option just a little bit easier. I think that might benefit and might get more participation in our elections. So those are my thoughts.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, could I ask Susan maybe a little bit of how the absentee voting process works right now? Like what is required of the person voting?
Susan?
They print something, sign stuff, send stuff in. How does all that work?
You bet.
Sure.
Susan?
So absentee has absentee by mail and absentee in person. And absentee in person is in fact early voting because you don't have to prove any reason why you're doing it, except that you're choosing to come in the week. It's for 2 weeks ahead of the election that we have absentee in person available. And I would say the onerous part is that there's some paperwork to fill out. But I feel like if I make some small code changes, we could maybe extend the length of time for absentee in person and also do away with some of the paperwork, because there was a time when the voter rolls that we used to have to get from the state would have to be mailed, and the deadline is 30 days before. As long as you're registered in Cordova 30 days before, you can vote in the election, and then absentee in person starts 2 weeks ahead. So I think it wouldn't always get to us in time to process those and get it to us. But now it's electronic, it's immediate. I think we could extend the amount of time you can do it and maybe have the rolls available right there, and the election official is just like the election official at, in-person voting, so they can just let you sign it. So that would be easier. And absentee by mail, I'd like to make easier for the clerk's office as well as cheaper, because right now they have to be sent certified, and it's like $8 per ballot mailed. So if that were just first-class mail, which a lot of other codes have, other municipalities I looked at, that would make it easier also. And then if more people wanted to do absentee by mail locally, because presently we really only get absentee by mail for people who are snowbirds or know that they happen to be on a vacation at the time, and I send it to them. But maybe more locals would want to do that, so maybe I'd have like some kind of a vault built that is more appropriate for drop-off right at City Hall. So if I process, 50 or 100 of them, they don't all have to put them in the mail to get back to me. Those are some answers to those questions, maybe a lot more than you asked, sorry.
Vice
No, I
Mayor?
think that was good. I guess one question I'd have, so if somebody is, say, on vacation or they know they're going to be leaving and they request it by mail, do they get an absentee form from you, and do they have to, find a printer to sign it, send it back to you, or can they do it all by email with you? How does that?
I might change that process too. I mean, I'm pretty forgiving right now, and I do a lot of, if you can print it, sign it, send a picture and send it to me kind of thing, because I'm giving everybody the opportunity to vote. But I agree, printer sometimes is the hassle. But currently, I like a signature. So I'd find a way to work that out too, though. I agree that needs to be adjusted a little.
I know at least right now I've been filling a lot of digital signatures out online that you have to sign up and say something and do stuff. So maybe there could be a way to do that.
Right. And so what it would be by mail, they do have to, when they get the ballot and send the ballot back in by mail, there has to be a signature on that oath and affidavit form. And that is my opportunity to check against the state voter registration electronic list that they have, because there are actual signatures on that. So that's, if people are afraid of voting by mail for fraud, that's an excellent thing I have to check up, but I would need a signature on that. But I see what you mean about not needing a signature on the application for absentee.
Right. Yeah, I was just trying to see if voting by mail or requesting that was an onerous process where, people forget they can't get a printer or something, so they just end up not voting. And I think that's the intention, is to have people vote as much as possible. And like you said, when they have the actual ballot, they do have to sign that, or that paperwork with the ballot. So So I guess I'm on the train of making adjustments to city code right now to make it easier to vote by mail, allowing the clerk to possibly look into easier ways for early voting options. I know I personally have voted early in person, a lot of times never by mail, but if there was an option to vote by mail locally, that could be really good for our elderly population. And maybe even looking into people who have disabilities or over the age of X amount, elderly or something, where they don't have to request a ballot every election, maybe even allowing them some kind of automatic, like every local election, they get something mailed to them, just to make it as accessible and easy as possible. Then the other thing that I was kind of thinking too, especially during this whole pandemic, is how we've been focusing on making sure that we have our signs printed up in multiple languages. It might be worth looking into of having our ballot also accessible in other languages in our community. So those are my thoughts, but I do think that we need to make some tweak adjustments to the city code. Probably hasn't been done in a while, and a lot of things are done electronically now from the state rather than having everything in paperwork and sending things in all the time. So I would say number 3, and I'm not opposed to looking into entirely going into 100%. I think even those communities that have done 100% by mail have still offered some kind of in-person, like drop off your ballot or something like that. So even though places that are 100% by mail, they do have some kind of option to go in, just like 100% in person, you still have an option for getting some in mail. So I'm on 3 and 4 train. I think 3 would be more doable, just making adjustments to what we have currently. Thanks.
Okay, and then just a clarification, when you say extend the time, you mean extend it on the front end of,
Me?
yeah, on the
I would say
absentee?
maybe have absentee in person available for longer than the 2 weeks
Okay, so.
to avoid crowds.
In other words, they would have 3 weeks or something before the election, not 2 weeks before and 1 week after with the questions and everything. Okay.
Yeah, it can't be after.
The reason I'm asking is because if someone wants to declare as a write-in or something, you're closing that window between when people declare and get on the ballot and the actual election. So that's why I was asking. And an experienced clerk should know better, but you put 5 options in front of 5 council, and so far we have 3 councilmen and 3 different preferences. I'm being facetious. It's a
Yeah.
good discussion. So Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I would support 2 and 3 and take a look, see it. I would support anything you want to do to streamline the process. I agree with you. Getting the $8 mail out is probably a good idea. And yeah, I would support anything you can kind of streamline. You know best this process. And just the thought too, can you give a day that older people, maybe if susceptible, could come in and vote? Is that an option? You know, I don't know, maybe you could think about that process too. But yeah, I would support any changes you want to make, and I agree with the getting the $8 out. And I don't want total mail-in. I don't think that's the way to go. Thanks.
Okay, and Councilman Gard.
Yeah, hello. Let me bounce back and forth between all this. I don't know that we're going to gain that much from option number 2. Do know what some of the problems are. Extending in person beforehand, in-person absentee still doesn't solve physical interaction problems. But we run into a social distancing with COVID. I know this isn't all about COVID, but if we can set up a system to where we can have a better voting system, if this doesn't rectify itself, this COVID deal doesn't rectify itself anytime soon, or we get a new one in 5 years, I think we'd be better off for it. I think being able, during times of pandemic and stuff, I think being able to recruit poll workers. Most of our poll workers tend to be more senior. They have time available. Have been voters all their life and see the value in the system. It may be harder to recruit people like that because they may be more at risk. I think anything we can do to make it easier to vote without the in-face interaction is a good thing. I don't know that I'm wholly in favor of number 4, but I would really, I'm not opposed to number 4. I don't think we've shown that there are any problems with voter fraud nationally, or in any states that I'm aware of with this. I know it's been thrown out there as an issue, but I have never seen any proof of it. If we can make something that's simpler and easier for everybody to voice their opinion without putting anybody at risk, I think we're better off for it. So I'd say 3 and 4 were my 2 favorite options. Thank you.
Is that the direction you were looking for, Susan, or? I think, I mean, as I keep score, basically what I'm hearing is 1, maintain the status quo, 2 would support 2, 3 would support 3, 2 would support 4, 1 was opposed to 4, but those 2 supports for 4 was kind of as an option for 3.
Yes.
So I think I'm hearing the most consensus around choice 3 to make some tweaks to the code.
And
to make
that
it easier
would
to
have
vote.
been my preference as well. So, and if I put together an ordinance and bring it in front of you, obviously you can then weigh
Amend it and tweak it.
amendments and yes.
Okay. All right, thanks, Council.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Allison, yes.
Yeah, just to clarify for the clerk's information there, I'm against 4, but I'm not against making changes to make things streamlined a little bit, so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your clarification. And I should have asked, is there any other comments from council? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, next item is discussion of COVID-19 emergency response. And I think I just will go down through the list for expediency if there's any general questions or comments. Councilman Baylor.
No comment.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
No comment, thanks.
Councilman Guard.
No comment. Just like to express thanks to 2 employees that we'll be losing that have been a big help during this, Jason Gabriel and Chief Hicks. So thank you very much to both of you for all your service to Cordova. You'll be sorely missed. That's all.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, no, just thanks to the IMT for all the work that they've been doing, all those involved with that, and I'm sure that they've already been consulted on the CARES Act funding, but I think that they probably has a lot of good ideas too, the IMT on what we need and don't need there. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
Councilman Sherman.
No comment. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go to audience participation again. That number is 253-6202. So I'm just thinking ahead to next Wednesday meeting's agenda. We don't have a pending agenda item here, so I guess I would just remind council that we have a regular council meeting next Wednesday. If there are any agenda items or anything, just get those to the clerk. And again, concurrence to council. For my part, I have been in discussions with Greg Meyer. He may request to brief council. He and Bert are talking, and they may come to council with any requests that NBE has regarding the hospital. So I'll probably put that on the agenda, and I've just requested that that's done in open session if there's anything that requires to go into executive session, we'd always have that option, so we may put that on there. Councilman Baylor.
So if we have a regular meeting next Wednesday, so we won't need a noon meeting? That thought process there?
No, we were going to go with a regular.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're on council comments. Do we have any callers, audience? Okay, we'll go ahead into council comments. Councilman Sherman.
Sure, thank you. I was just gonna suggest maybe, Helen, that those under 25,000 items that the staff's working on with you, maybe those could just be included in your manager's report, and that way we could stay abreast on work that's being done. And then when any of the CARES project funding come back to us, I used to have in practice a couple fiscal managers ago, fiscal notes that would be attached with any kind of project. And it was I'm sure Susan still has the form. It's really good. It could show if we're partnering with someone on funding, for example, the school restroom or whatever, and just where the sources of funding are coming from. Just it's really helpful as a council member to see dollars attached to a project. So then that's all I have for today.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman Schaefer is absent. Councilman Gard.
No more comments. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you. Councilman Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, I thought today's discussion was a good one. Thanks for bringing this stuff forward to the manager, and also thank you to those few staff members also that are moving on from Cordova. So I really appreciate all the hard work that they've done. And thank you.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, no, I'd like to express thanks and appreciation to Jason and Mike there too. Best wishes to your futures, and Mike, enjoy retirement, and I'm sure Jason's moving on to something bigger and better. So good luck to you both. Thank you.
And Councilman Glasson's absent. Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I would echo Councilman Sherman's comments there on the projects, and also thanks to the employees, and just a shout out too to the canneries. I think that's the job that they're doing to keep themselves safe and this community safe. I think they've done a great job, and really appreciate all of their efforts.
Okay, so we haven't had any audience participation calls and no executive session items, so we have only one remaining item.
Move to adjourn.
Say, Paul. Paul? Oh, can I get you for just a second? Okay, is there any objection to adjourning? Hearing none, we're adjourned.